Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Sales Manager Academy podcast. As always, I'm your host, Omar, and we talk leadership in boutique retail settings, right? So think wireless retail, think AV sales, think appliances, things of that nature. I got a strand of hair sticking out right there. That was going to bug me if we kept it there. Um, but no, back on subject, right? And that's what we do here. We talk leadership, ways we can improve our leadership traits, ways that we can skill up, become better for our teams to lead them through not just regular times, but more importantly, through times of uncertainty, through times of difficult uh, economic uncertainty. And that's what we're going through right now. Uh, I remember the first time that I took a leadership role, I took it in an area that wasn't the best. So when I first got my leadership role, I ended up getting one of two choices, right? I got my pick. I could take one that was literally 5 minutes from where I lived, uh, and was performing well, and I was going to be maintaining it, right? I could do that, and this location was doing very well. Or I could take a location that was about 45 minutes drive away. And it had been a location that at one point was doing very well, was actually one of our best performing locations in the market in the region. They in recent times had struggled. They've gone through multiple managers, and they just couldn't keep production up. Because the previous manager that had it, that ran it, she was from that town. She was very local, very involved in the community. Um, so everybody knew to go to her, and she did well. And the managers that came after her, obviously not so much. So I got a choice between those two. I could take the easy route and just keep the status quo, or I could take the one that was going to be a challenge, was going to be very difficult, uh, going in and trying to turn it around and see where we can land. And I took the one that was more difficult. It's been my personality. It's always been my personality. I prefer a challenge. I get tired and bored of the mundane, right? Having to do the same thing over and over again, where there is no difference, there's no challenge to attain. Because you could say, well, you can take the one that's performing well and try to improve it. You can, but you could only squeeze so much juice out of something that's already been squeezed. Okay. Not to say that, there's no more potential. It's more difficult to notice the potential that you're getting, the outcome that you're getting when it's already running well, right? You're really more so trying to maintain it and make sure it doesn't dip. And when it comes to times of uncertainty, that's where your leadership is actually pushed to its limit. That's where you get to see what kind of leadership you actually have or are actually truly developing. Because at that point, you have to do things differently. You have to think outside the box. You have to figure out what actually is going to work and what isn't going to work. And that's what happens a lot in times of uncertain economic uh, times, right? It becomes more apparent who's a good leader and who is not. Because those that are, leaders in a position that they don't really have to do much when things hit the fan, they don't know what to do. And they get caught like a deer in headlights trying to figure out what to do because they're not really proactive leaders. They're very reactive and they don't have to worry about doing much because there's not much for them to do. It's an easy peasy job. You guys know what kind of leaders I'm talking about. And then you have those are a little bit more involved. They actually care about what's going on. They keep, the pulse on what the field is saying and not just reading the numbers, but also really understanding what is going on behind the numbers, what is driving the numbers, or what is driving the lack of those numbers. And that's what you really need to see because when you become more proactive in that case, you can start seeing little patterns that start to show up and you can say, all right, this is what we need to do to head it off to make sure we get ahead of it before it overtakes us. And that's a very tough thing for a lot of leaders to really understand and get to. Uh, because a lot of them want to wait and see what happens instead of realizing that things go in patterns. And you have to recognize those patterns in order to become really good at leading your people. It's not always going to be 100%. It's not a, drill down for a fact, written in stone, um, formula or scientific fact. The patterns are human behaviors. You can say we're very cyclical, right? We've talked about this in previous podcasts. We're in sales, especially like in a retail setting, doesn't matter if it's a boutique retail setting like we're talking about, but you go through cycles, right? You go through seasons. It's not your regular 4 seasons of the year. It's more shopping seasons, right? It doesn't matter what industry you in, that is the case, right? If, for instance, government education, you have certain seasons where, hey, this is the time that those decisions need to be made. This is when we focus on doing this part. This is when we really need to drive it in because our window to get into the budget for the following year is going to get closed by X period. So you have to be understanding of those cycles. You have to be understanding of those patterns, and you have to notice what's going on to truly realize how those patterns will affect outcomes. And as a leader, that's where you need to really step in because during these times when either we're seeing less foot traffic, we're seeing less money move through the door, we price things a lot higher, but we're retaining less on the back end. What that means for our salespeople, what that means for our bonuses, our commissions, means that it obviously is going to lower our payout even though we're producing more. So that's kind of where we're at. And you have to understand some of the patterns that you're going to be seeing because you need to know how your leadership can really flourish and shine during economic uncertainty, right? Through tough patches. It doesn't matter if it's a good economy, a bad economy, you're always going to have tough patches that will arise. A tough patch in a good economy won't last very long, and hey, we'll be able to rebound real fast because we got other headways we can go to. A bad patch during a bad economy is like, oh shit, the fuck are we going to do? Because our traffic at these locations dropped by 30 to 50%. And it doesn't show signs of coming back anytime soon. That's where things become really, really apparent for your leadership style. And there's so much that you can say it's the economy, it's your, the people. It's not my leadership. I'm telling them what to do. Really, you have to take a look at how your team not only performing, but also their outlook. How are they reacting to what's going on? What are the actions that they're taking to, because of what's happening? And you can say, well, they're just doing what they do normally. What is it that they do normally? When your team struggles and times are tough, it's your leadership approach that's really going to become apparent whether you're a true leader that's pushing your team and leading your team to success, or you're a leader that really is just managing locations but really doesn't know what to do to help their teams move forward, to actually propel their teams to that next stage, and to keep things afloat. And that's where you need to really get back, right? Because you'll end up reacting a lot more than being proactive. You're going to end up shifting the blame. You guys know what kind of leaders I'm talking about, where they don't take ownership of the lack of performance. They put that on everything else but themselves. And the truth, uncertain times are really going to be the ultimate test and the opportunity for your leadership because great leaders don't wait for times to get calm. They coach their team to thrive in those tough patches. Because when they can thrive in those tough patches, they can become much better at what they're doing in good times. So that can be made back up during those periods. And on top of that, they now have more skills and traits. And if done correctly, you're actually building leaders that can take that and be able to showcase that to others. So your efforts now become a multiplicator. So it's a force multiplier. And that's the important thing. Now, those tough times, they're going to expose your real leadership, and you got to use that to your advantage. Okay. That's the big thing because it's going to show the gaps of your skills and your biggest coaching opportunities. Okay. That's a big one. Not just for you, because you can kind of tell and start figuring out, like, hey, what's going on with what I'm doing. Sometimes it's very hard for us to see that when we're the ones looking in, trying to see out. But when we have somebody that can help us look from the outside in, when you have a mentor, a guide, when you have a community, it becomes a lot easier to recognize that and be able to fix it, correct it, and pivot. And this is the time where you need to really double down on coaching and developing instead of, you know, going back, hiding in a hole, or worse yet, jumping on the sales floor instead of trying to coach and train your people. But Omar, I can sell more when I'm there physically. They need that lift. I get it that they need the lift. What they need more, though, is your support as a leader to become better because they're scared shitless. They don't know what the fuck is going on, they don't know what to do. And that uncertainty is creeping into their performance. It's also creeping into other parts of their life. So, by being a strong pillar, by being somebody that can help them see that, hey, there is more that we can do still. This is not the end of the road. Let's continue pushing. It could also do something in for them on a personal level that they may not have had. Remember, guys, a lot of what you do as a leader, a lot of what you do as a coach are things that people have not had in their life. Many people have not had somebody that actually believes that they can perform well. A lot of them haven't had somebody who actually takes time and invests in them to coach them, to train them, to help them skill up, to help them level up in life. And that's where things are really different for you as a leader compared to anybody else that they've had in their life. You want to be the impactful coach, the impactful leader that actually really does make a difference in people's life, that really helps people see there's more to me as an individual than what even I think I'm doing. That makes a big difference. That can help unlock a potential that you could never see. And those stories that you hear of like locations doing very well even during tough patches, it's not because they had some magic new hire. No, it's because they have somebody who believes in others and is doing everything that they can to help them level up. That is where things become different for you as a leader. And not everything is learned behavior on the sales floor. You have to set it up correctly in order for your team to be able to run with it. Okay. Uh, Now, uncertainty builds skills that normal times won't be able to, or it'll at least help you level up a lot faster in certain skills because you have to focus on it more. Remember, guys, the whole point of my 15-minute framework that I've used, the big part of it is visualization because that's able to help you do actual role playing scenarios that are very impactful and can be done a lot faster and can be visualized the whole way through. That's where it becomes different, right? It's funny because me and my wife, so we finished potty training not too long ago for both of our kids. And the biggest thing that, and this will be true for any parent, right? Let me know if you guys have gone through this or not yet. Uh, but wiping after taking a dump for kids is the hardest thing because it's not a natural thing, right? It's easy for a kid to realize, oh, this is how I feel when I need to use the restroom. They go use the restroom and then they're done. They flush the toilet, lift their pants up. But what is natural about wiping your own ass? Think about that. That's not a very, in the wild, animals don't do that. They don't have to really wipe themselves. They just dump, go, and move on. And people, we don't do that. We wipe. So you have to teach them. And it's very hard for them to visualize certain things because they can't see their rear. They can't really figure out how to do it. And one of the techniques that, you know, we were introduced to was showing how to clean yourself using like a doll, right? That's a visualization technique because yes, they're doing it, but they're also visualizing what they need to do for themselves. And they can do that more times than they will poop in a day, obviously. So think about that. That's the same concept when we're talking about visualization during a coaching session. You can do multiple visualization scenarios in the span of 15 minutes, more than you could doing an actual role play where you make it very awkward or through, observing customer interactions. You can do a lot more of that. So you're talking about doing a lot more repetitions, just like in the gym. The more reps you can get in, the better you're going to be at doing that exercise. The better your muscle memory is going to be at actually being able to do that, and you can increase as needed. You can pin down, the areas where you need to get a little bit better by doing more. It's the exact same concept. You're now doing more. And this is where we have to really embrace and really focus on teaching things like adaptability, problem solving, and resilience, right? And you do that a lot through having those coaching sessions by setting those goals, reinforcing the goals, but more importantly, setting up the action items, the action steps that they're going to take to really move forward and get after their goals. Make them visualize what they're actually going to do. You don't tell them. That's the hardest part for a lot of leaders, for a lot of managers, is understanding that you don't tell people what to do. But Omar, how are we going to give instruction? Yes, you can guide them by giving the instruction, but as far as the actual steps they need to take, there's a difference between when you tell somebody something and when they take ownership of doing the items needed, those steps needed to really move forward. That's where your coaching really is going to come in. And that's where the conversations are a little bit different, right? That's where you can start to help people build that confidence under pressure because you're kind of taking the pressure off of them by having them visualize it, visualizing the steps that they're going to take through the process, having them verbalize it, having them write it out, because they're really repeating it in their brain. And remember, your mind cannot distinguish from you physically doing something and you actually doing something. That's the hard part to really get forward. Okay. Now, one thing that you guys need to realize is even though your mind can't differentiate, your body can a little bit. You will have a sense of fatigue. First, starting off, because you're once again making your people do something that they've never done before. You're making them use different neuron connections in their brain that they either haven't had before, they haven't utilized very often, and that will cause some fatigue. Just like when you go to the gym and you work out, obviously, the more you work out, the easier it's going to be over time because you can focus on your breathing, you can focus on how you're doing the reps. And then as muscle memory becomes better, because your muscles obviously ripping apart and getting growing back together stronger, your brain is doing the same thing. Their brain is doing the same thing. Since they're now having to utilize different parts and creating new connections that haven't been there before, haven't been truly utilized before, it's going to create some fatigue at first. If you're wondering why can't they just do that every single time? The reason why is because that mental fatigueness. But as they do more, as you do more coachings, as they participate more, as they visualize more, it'll become a lot easier where they won't have that mental fatigueness and they will be able to repeat it more. And that's why those coaching sessions are going to be very, very important now because less customers we see, the less actual interactions that they're going to go through, the less they're going to actually do. So you need to focus on more in between those. And that's where you, as a district or regional area manager, need to really focus on making sure your local leaders are doing everything that they can to become a true coach and trainer for their people. So you're kind of training your trainers, you're coaching your coaches in the field. Super, super important to do. Um, Now, this practice is going to help strengthen the mindset of your people. And it becomes a lot easier to really set up winning teams, set up your people for success. Because I've said it before, right now is not a time where you want to be losing employees. Because a lot of companies right now, even though, yes, you see a bunch of hiring stuff, a lot of them are still going to be very conservative when it comes to their hiring needs. A lot of them are still going to just have those hiring now signs or websites up because, hey, in case we need a backlog, right? We'll have a bunch of people apply, and then if we really need somebody, then we can kind of go back and we'll have a bunch of people that we can reach out to. It sucks, but that's kind of what we're in right now. So understand that economic uncertain times amplifies the stress, amplifies your lack of leadership skills, or amplifies how great your leadership skills actually are. So use this time, use these opportunities to really reinforce your team's habits and mindsets, to set up winning teams, to set up your leadership as a winning leadership style. And then through consistent coaching, through consistent visualization, you're going to help build resilient teams that thrive during these times. And it's going to really be your competitive edge, not just within the organization, right? To set you apart and set your team apart from everybody else, but also within your territory, within, when we're talking wireless carriers, we all understand that, yes, it might be one umbrella, but there's multiple dealers that sell that umbrella, that sell that same product and service. It's going to set you apart through them so that you can be best in class. That's where you're going to start seeing the difference. Because you're going to see it if you haven't already. Obviously, a decline in foot traffic means less volume, right? And if you can at least show that, hey, my KPIs are strong and still maintain positive growth, even if it's a sliver, right? You guys don't understand how strong positive growth is during times when foot traffic is considerably down. It truly makes a difference. And then when you can stack that with great KPIs, with great attach rates on the other KPI metrics, I mean, you're coming out a superhero. And your team's going to know the difference. Because remember, you want to make sure that they make as much as they can make, doing the less amount of work as possible. Because when you can get your team behind you, rallied behind that fact that, hey, yeah, it's going to be uncertain times right now. We don't really know what's going to go on, how it's truly going to affect us long term. But my goal is still the same. I want you to make the most amount of money doing the least amount of work. So let's get these reps in. Let's get these coaching sessions in to really get you geared up, to really get you performing. That way we don't have to worry as much about, any downturns down the road. And that's where you start really seeing the difference in your team's performance. So I'll leave it there, guys. Remember, the best leaders don't fear uncertainty. They leverage it to build unbeatable teams. And that's what you do as a leader. You help guide, you help coach, mentor your people to success. And that's how you truly become a great leader. All right, guys, I want to say thanks again for stepping in to another episode here at the Sales Manager Academy podcast. I'm Omar, and I'll catch you on the next one.